What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at building a PC for my kids. They've been non-stop wanting to play on my PC. I've got an RTX 4090 and an i9. It well outperforms the PS5, gets much better fidelity. You know, it's got all the ray tracing, 4K, and I'm getting 120-ish FPS, all that stuff. So they really want something, they really want to play on my PC, and they want something of their own to do that. They do have a gaming laptop. It's getting outdated though. It's got an i7 6700HQ and a GTX 1070 Max-Q, which both being that they're the mobile versions of their counterparts, the desktop versions, they're much less performing than the desktop version. So they're falling even further behind because of that. So it's kind of struggling. Their gaming laptop just isn't keeping up with modern games at 1080p even, unfortunately. So I've been wanting to build something, but looking at PC Part Picker, it's just too expensive to build something that's going to outperform a PS5. Going through everything with either a Ryzen 5600 or an i5 12600 with between a 3060 and a 3070, I was easily getting up into $1,100 to $1,500 for those type of builds. It's just too much for me to want to spend on the kids when they have so much already. But by chance, I came across the perfect option for a build on Facebook Marketplace of all places. So I got this PC. I have the panels off right now just to make it easier to see. But this is it right here. So we've got an i7 7700K. So it is still a little bit older, but it is a desktop version. It's going to perform pretty well. And then when we slap a good GPU in here, it's going to rely a lot more on those GPU as long as I stay up to 1440p to 4K on my resolutions. Those resolutions depend a little bit less on the CPU. If you go down to 1080p, yes, then the CPU starts really bottlenecking. But at 1440p to 4K, I think this is going to be a perfect setup to build. And it cost me all the low price of $0.00. It was absolutely free, so I couldn't pass that up. Now, it wasn't including everything. It didn't have a power supply, and it didn't have a hard drive, and obviously not a GPU. But it did have that i7. It's got all the fans, it's got the motherboard, and it had the RAM, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 Corsair Vengeance LPX RAM in it. So I went ahead and slapped a spare power supply that I had, a Corsair AX860i, so that's an 860 watt platinum rated power supply. And then I also grabbed a cheap M.2, a 2 terabyte Gen 4 M.2. It is a no-name kind of brand from Amazon Japan. Since I'm located in Japan, it was the quickest option I could get. And then I went ahead and tested it out just to make sure that it would boot and everything worked flawlessly. So I'll show you real quick a few things that I had to do to get it to look like this at the moment, not including the power supply and routing that. I did that all off camera. But right now you'll see the things that I had to do to make it look like this. All right, so we're all set up. You got your view down on the computer. Let me take a sip of my drink real quick. And we will now take a look at all of this. We'll go ahead and remove the fan from the heat sink of the CPU cooler. Sorry, trying to do this without interfering with the video too much. Alright. Oop, wrong size of my screwdriver. Bigger one. Beauty of electric screwdrivers. It's just so quick to remove something so easily. Alright, so we've got the cooler off. It's got the copper exposed on the bottom. It's something that ID Cooling advertises as like part of their pitch for why it's a better cooler. I believe it's like a 135 watt TDP cooler, something like that. I couldn't really find it. I found it in like a comment on Amazon. So don't quote me on that, but it is a fairly decent cooler, especially for a base clock, not overclocked, 7700K. It's more than enough. But let's remove these brackets here. They're definitely at the wrong angle. Just for the sake of time, actually, I'm going to do these by finger so I can do two at once. But since these brackets have the screw, it's top and bottom, I have to rotate them to be side and side. But take those off and just get them out of the way for now. As we continue to remove the parts. And this is a older, still pretty decent motherboard. It is the MSI Z270 X Gaming Titanium. There we go, right here. Z270 X Gaming Titanium. It didn't come with any type of onboard dedicated Wi-Fi. It has pretty good audio from all the reviews you see. Obviously it is dated, but I always just stick with the integrated audio on the motherboard. I've never gotten an audio card. I'm not some type of audiophile or anything, but it has the audio boost, and it's supposed to be pretty good audio. It does have SPDIF output and all of the different regular 3.5 or 2. Whatever size the regular audio jack is. Has a bunch of outputs for that to do a whole entertainment system or whatever you want to do. So there's plenty of opportunity for that type of stuff. One weird thing to me, I've personally never seen it before, but the bottom of these DDR slots, they don't come out. Only the tops do. I noticed that earlier. I was taking a look at it. So I'll remove the RAM sticks. So we've got 2 sticks, DDR4 Corsair Vengeance LPX, and we're looking at, probably won't focus, but hopefully, it's a 3200 megahertz, and it's looks like a C16. So relatively good, 16 gigabytes of DDR4, 3200 megahertz, Jesus Christ. Sorry about that. 3200 megahertz DDR4 RAM, 16 gigabytes. We'll probably want to upgrade that eventually, but no rush on that. Next, we'll take this fan off. I'd already started taking it off earlier, so these screws are... All right, so those are all in there. Let me go grab a paper towel. We'll pop this CPU out. Now, one thing I will say, I know a lot of people are probably going to freak out. I don't have any type of electrostatic discharge equipment on. I am fully aware of the risks I take by doing this. I have done this without any type of electrostatic discharge equipment since 2009-ish, when I first started building computers as a kid in middle school, or high school actually, sorry. And I have never once had a problem. Sorry, that's not a good way to pick up a CPU. But I've never once had a problem with electrostatic discharge. Not wearing a band or any of that stuff. Just wipe it off. Wipe off this CPU. Don't have any isopropyl, but typically a good rag wiping is able to get off most of the thermal paste. Wipe off the top of this. It's all over the socket clamp. that's really about it. Let me get my duster. We'll go over and blow out the dust in this computer. We'll start with the regular attachment, just blowing air. And that should be enough dusting of this computer. Oof, dust is in my eyes. Alright, so that's everything in there. All looks fairly good. It's all dusted out. So I'll put this back together real quick. Let me go grab some thermal paste, and then we will get to a little talk. All right, see you in a second. All right, we're back. I took some Q-tips, cleaned off this CPU a little bit better in the corners. There's some on the frickin' plastic of the socket. Grabbed my thermal paste. Hopefully there's enough in these tubes. I can never tell with the small ones. We'll drop that in. All of those are lined up. Drop our CPU down. None of that plastic popping out bull crap you see nowadays. I will always remove those. I know they say, obviously this isn't a new motherboard, so it wouldn't have been there. I know they say just like remove before starting or something like that. Like it doesn't say you have to remove it before you put the CPU in. I just hate the idea of relying on my CPU to push out a piece of plastic. So I will always remove those by hand if I have a motherboard with it on there still. Let's see, I don't know, so I have some Ectotherm. I don't know how much I have in it, if any. Okay, there's a little bit. Give it a little. Okay, yeah, no, nothing else is coming out of that. That's empty. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to use this cheaper thermal paste that I have sitting around here for the rest of it. I was trying to go for a cross, but I guess I was pushing too hard and drug it through. Oops. All right, so drop some thermal take on there. And give it a dot in the corners. It's not pretty, but it'll do. All right. Now again, I have to put these brackets back on. Now, so on this ID cooling one, easiest way to tell, ID goes up top. Make sure those line up. Yep, everything's lining up good. Now, I do it side to side on this one, just to make sure the pressure is dispersed between better. Not saying it's perfect, but it's better than if you just do all the way down on one side and then the other side. The pressure can become, because it'll add so much pressure here that this is a slight angle and adds quicker to put more pressure on here. You distribute it both sides, go side to side, and it lets it go down evenly better. As you'll notice, so you see on this side of the cooler, on the my left side right now, so this side, there is very little room. You can just barely see the screw right there, the mounting screw. On this side, there's a lot of room, so you got to make sure when you're installing this cooler that you have it like that, because otherwise, on your RAM, the fan will interfere with it. Drop that in, and then we'll show you the fan. So since we have it properly, now we've got even slot 1, we have room to put in the RAM still. So I'll take this up top here. I have to pull this wire back through here to hide it a bit. Actually, we won't go up top, we'll go sideways because this has got to mount. Now, this is one thing I hadn't seen before. It's been a long time since I've messed with air coolers, but these pinch-on brackets, whatever you want to call them, I think they're really cool. I like it a lot. It makes it a lot easier. When I was younger, it used to just have screw holes for the fan to mount onto the CPU cooler with instead of these. Yeah, so I really like those. That's kind of cool. I'll take this and we'll push it through. Make sure there's room for the last or the first RAM slot, in case I ever want to put more RAM in the future. Put our second stick in, making sure to follow. So I've reviewed the motherboard's manual already. I had to download it off of MSI's website to make sure that I'm following the correct sequence to make sure that the RAM runs in dual channel instead of single channel. So running in slot 2 and 4 is the way this motherboard recommends it. I think that's usually what most motherboards recommend. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a motherboard manufacturer. So that is all set up. And then we'll slap in one other thing. So the only thing I've purchased at the moment for it, because I just love them and they're becoming so affordable. And then they just make the computer look so much nicer to me. I think adding these, but an M.2. I got a 2 terabyte. It is a Japanese branded M.2. That is weird. This obviously isn't stuck on the greatest. I guess it's not the best heat sink. I thought it was thermal padded on there, but it's not. I just pushed it through too much now. Do that again. All right. There we go. So, anyways, but an M.2. This is some random Japanese brand of M.2. It's a 2 terabyte. It is a Gen 4 M.2. I always try to go for the best. I know the older, not even my CPU or my computer could handle this generation of M.2 Gen 4, but they are backwards compatible. So I like to always go for the newest, as long as it's backwards compatible, I like to go for the newest technology available. That way, whenever this computer does get upgraded in the future, I have a fully capable M.2 for PC or for Gen 4 to make sure I can get that faster speed. I know this will only run at the max speed of the Gen 3 that this can support, but I'm ready for the future. And that's always my biggest thing, is making sure at least a little bit that my computers are ready for the future and not stuck in the past. Now I know, yeah, sure, some of you are going to say, well, that i7 7700K is going to be stuck in the past, and yeah, it kind of is, but it still is going to be able to keep up. And I think once we get a GPU in here, that we're going to be quite surprised at the performance of it. And I might even test it with my 4090 eventually, just to see how the 7700K stands up with the 4090. Anyways, so all right, so as you saw, it was just flipping the fan and flipping the cooler around because they were oriented weird. We had 4 intakes, and then this fan was, the CPU cooler was sucking heat from above the way it was set up, and that just doesn't make sense since heat rises, it would just be sucking hot air back into it and blowing hot air down here. Just none of it made sense really. So we've oriented that stuff properly, or at least a little bit more better for the flow. And now we just have to look at getting a GPU for this at minimum. So let me know down below in the comments, what GPU would you get for this setup, being that it was free? I would absolutely love to get a free GPU and call this the Freebird. I got that comment on Reddit saying, try to get a free GPU and call the setup Freebird. And it was an amazing idea. The likelihood of that, though, is slim. I don't think that's going to happen. And if it does, it's going to be a low-end GPU and it's not really going to perform. Like, I could slap a free GPU in because I have this old 3870X2, but this isn't going to give any type of performance. And that's going to be about the same with any other GPU that I find for free at this point in time. So I'm thinking that I just need to get everything more budget friendly. So between $500 to $600, I'm thinking is going to be my max budget on all of the things I spend to get this computer up to a spec that I think will be acceptable for my kids for now and for the future. So for me right now, the main thing is I think a 3070 is going to be the perfect point. That's going to give me great ray tracing. It's going to give me awesome frame rates in 1440p, which this top monitor back here, that's going to be the monitor for this setup eventually. And that's a 1440p 165 hertz monitor. So I think pairing a 3070 with this setup is going to be the sweet spot. But let me know down below, what would you do? What type of GPU would you do? Would you do more RAM? Would you do water cooling? What would you do to this setup had you got it for free? I look forward to seeing what you guys have to comment after seeing what the Redditors had to comment. I know you guys have some crazy ideas probably. So I'm going to be looking for your comments down below, and I hope you guys stick around and look for the next video on what GPU we do decide to put in this computer.